Chosen one, lock into the gravity of this moment because you prophesied this, and now someone is choking on your words. You warned them, they didn't listen, and now every consequence you described is manifesting in their reality. Your words didn't leave when they were rejected. They simply waited for reality to force the door open, and now that the truth has arrived with crushing weight, they are forced to swallow the bitter realization that your intuition was perfect from the start. Vine, vine, vine! Before the prophecy, before any of this, there was a face. Someone came into your world wearing exactly the right one, and they were genuinely skilled at wearing it. They knew how to read what a situation needed and become that thing. Warm when warmth opened doors, wounded when wounds generated sympathy, charming when charm brought credibility. Sweetness worn like a costume, not because the sweetness was real, but because performing sweetness is the most effective way to move through a world without being examined too closely. Most people were not examining closely. You were, not because you were suspicious by nature, not because you were looking for problems. You gave genuine openness, genuine care, genuine investment. But real attention reveals details, and the details started surfacing. Small inconsistencies at first, easy to explain away individually, persistent though, always persistent. Something did not add up. The moment your perception sharpened, even slightly, the entire dynamic shifted. Someone who survives through performance always feels when their audience begins to see through it. And at that point, there is a choice. Risk showing the real self, or double down on the performance and add another layer, or the doubling down happened immediately. That doubling down is the first domino. Everything that followed, the lies, the scheme, the elaborate false narrative, traces directly back to that one decision. It was the choice to protect the image over telling you the truth. It was the decision that you were too perceptive to be trusted with who they actually were. The trap they eventually fell into was built entirely with their own hands, right there at the beginning. Here is why honesty was never coming. No matter how patient you were or how much space you gave. People who have lived inside a constructed version of themselves long enough lose easy access to the real self. They could simply choose to show. The performance runs so deep it replaces the original. The carefully edited, image-managed version gets rehearsed so many times that even in private, even with no audience present, they still operate from the script. You were the first person in a long time who made that script feel fragile. Fragile felt dangerous to them. So they did what people like this always do when the image feels threatened. They controlled harder, managed tighter, and pulled every available lever to keep what they had built intact. They chose the image over you, every time, without a single exception. That choice is not a reflection of your value. It is a reflection of how little of a real self was available to offer. You had knowledge before you had proof. That is an uncomfortable position to stand in. You felt the wrongness of things the way you feel weather changing before the clouds appear, in your body, in your gut, in a quiet, persistent unease that never quite let you fully relax. And you did what people with real discernment always do. You paid attention, you watched, you waited for the evidence to catch up to the knowing. And while you were waiting, you said something. Maybe it was a warning about the path they were on. Maybe you named a pattern in how they operated. Maybe you spoke directly about consequences. If this continues, here is where it leads. You said it with care. You said it because you genuinely did not want what you could see coming to actually arrive. The way they responded told you everything. They did not get thoughtful, they got defensive. The kind of defensiveness that comes from someone who has been misunderstood and wants to clarify. The other kind, the kind that erupts in someone who has been accurately understood and needs to shut that down immediately. The campaign to make you the problem began quietly, invisibly, right at that moment. Or, a person who has nothing to hide does not work this hard to hide it. The energy poured into managing your perception, managing what others thought of you, managing the entire landscape of information around their own life. That is not the energy of someone living honestly. That is the energy of someone running a full maintenance operation on a fabrication. That kind of operation requires tracking every version of every account given to every person. It requires staying ahead of every potential exposure. It requires constant, relentless labor. Would even all at all but choose punctuachain, amventi polbunitment of phobos people alternative to me samite. You were just living, but if that asymmetry matters deeply, hold on to it. If this resonates with your inner knowing, hype this video to help fellow chosen ones find their way here. When you issued your warning, it was not simply rejected and forgotten. In private, it settled in like a splinter, too small to extract cleanly, too present to ignore. They would have been far more comfortable if you had been dramatic about it, if the words had come out loud and emotionally charged. Loud is easy to dismiss. Calm lands in a completely different way. You were calm. You named what you saw the way someone names an observable fact, with the steady certainty of a person simply reporting on something real. That calm was the most destabilizing thing you could have offered. There was no emotional performance in it to point to, no hysteria to repackage as instability. So another angle had to be constructed. Your clarity had to be reframed as coldness, as arrogance, as something sinister, anything other than what it actually was, someone who saw the truth and said so without flinching. What it told, one of the pleated. The klamping form to get sight of manarm thumpuded, but unforparitor knifeum with haukim and mordic sign when spo at used to vorid nose. Tad noken to be needed exudet to vorist to plium to make hugim. Because the people close enough to actually observe you could not reconcile the person being described with the person standing right in front of them. But your warning did not disappear. It lived quietly, waiting for permission to be believed. What uth permission now? This is the part most people soften. We are not going to soften it. While you were giving benefit of the doubt, while you were being the kind of person who speaks difficult truths because they genuinely care, a case was being built against you. A specific, strategic, carefully calibrated version of events was being circulated. In that version, the person doing the circulating had tried, had given, had suffered. And in that version, you were too difficult, too suspicious, too volatile. These conversations happened in places you were not present, about a situation you could not address because you were not there. To people who did not know you well enough to push back on the version they were being sold. That is not an accident. That is architecture. The structure was assembled before the collapse, so that when the truth came out, and on some level they always knew it would come out, enough people would already be positioned around the false version to absorb the impact. The goal was to make your truth look like bitterness, to borrow enough credibility from the performance to undermine yours before you could even open your mouth. All of this happened because they were afraid of exactly what is happening right now. Not afraid of you as a person, afraid of what you knew, afraid that what you prophesied would arrive in full, undeniable form. And the fear of that exposure drove the attempt to preemptively make you unbelievable. They spent enormous energy building the wrong thing. Look, you already know the attacks weren't random, and if you're paying attention, you can feel it. Their walls are closing in. You've also noticed something else. A lot of Chosen One channels on YouTube have gone quiet, videos removed, voices pushed off the platform. The mainstream media is cracking down on us, but we will not give up our voice. So let's talk about what we're doing about it. That's why I built Destiny Engine. And when you join, you're not just supporting your favorite channels, you're also fueling your own rise. It's a 360 win. It generates personalized sequences that help you rewire betrayal into transcendence, turn isolation into sacred power, and transform their downfall into your rise. We are using the Dark Elite's own weapons against them, taking their declassified consciousness technology that programmed competition and scarcity and repurposing it to serve cooperative intelligence. The beauty is, you don't even have to lift a finger. You put on the headphones, press play, and your subconscious is rewired while your enemies collapse under the weight of their own lies. This is why I created it in the beginning, so everything they did to break you becomes fuel for your purpose. All-Learning Collective Upgrade is underway. Start your Destiny engine for $7 today and watch divine justice accelerate in your life. Link in the description. When you build a case against someone, you need that person to cooperate, to fall apart in the ways you described. The case only holds if the person you called unstable becomes visibly unstable. If you said they were bitter, they need to perform bitterness. If you called them unreliable, they need to be caught being unreliable. You did not cooperate. You moved. You kept your composure. You kept your dignity. You did not go to war publicly. You did not chase the narrative. And that specific choice, the choice to not chase the narrative, is what quietly, over time, dismantled theirs. Everyone watching was making their own observations, not just listening to what they were told about you, actually watching you. And what they saw did not match what they were told. The person painted as the problem was not producing any problems. The person painted as difficult was carrying themselves with visible peace. The person cast as the villain was showing up consistently with their integrity intact. That produced a quiet question in the minds of everyone watching, and questions once formed do not dissolve on their own. Your life refused. Would you play me a climb? Would you pigid? Would you lost to nod God quaply demandaliset and sinful not to lean? That your son could that did to ask me use the body we will wins but without blood stubborn toastons. Tum go past blood and out of sunny days. But go past blood and 80 much a doleful no quab baladi. What's got black luck and Mr. Paul Boitov, but so much simple than to for plaskatolo, the buzz matter on civil sob and able couple sobla nass and stone, the pulpit stalls into a plum when they. You looked at the trajectory of everything unfolding and you named it plainly. You said, this is what is happening. You said, this is where it leads. You said, I see this clearly, and I am telling you now before the consequences arrive. The reaction was not quiet disagreement. The reaction was not quiet disagreement. The reaction was not quiet disagreement. It was eruption, wildly disproportionate to what was actually said, and disproportionate reactions are revealing. That response was not actually about your words. It was about being seen. It is what happens when someone whose entire operation depends on not being fully understood suddenly encounters someone who understands them completely. Your care got repackaged as your pathology. Your perception became paranoia in the retelling. Your refusal to look away from what was clearly happening became the evidence they used to paint you as unstable. And for a moment, the precision of that attack may have worked, because it landed on the one place where you had quietly wondered, am I too much? Am I seeing things that are not there? Is it possible I have this wrong? If your perception had been inaccurate, if you were genuinely manufacturing problems from nothing, then time would have proven it. Nothing you described would have materialized. The outcomes you predicted would have failed to appear. Instead, every specific thing you named came true. Every consequence you described arrived. Every outcome you said was coming, came. Not approximately, precisely. That is not paranoia. That is prophecy. Prophecy is not mystical guesswork. It is what happens when someone sees clearly enough and pays close enough attention to read where something is genuinely heading before it arrives. You followed the pattern all the way to its honest conclusion, rather than stopping at the comfortable middle where most people prefer to park. You drew an accurate map. You were told the map was wrong. And now someone is standing at the exact location you marked, holding evidence they cannot explain away, choking on every word you said. What of the connect your devia to the boundbines? Your always comes. It was not a dramatic unmasking. It never is. It was something small, a contradiction, a detail that did not align with a previous version of what had been said, a moment of behavior so inconsistent with the blameless, wounded image being maintained that someone who had been believing it stopped and thought, wait, that is all it takes. One person thinking, wait, A lie that depends on consistent performance has one structural weakness. The people performing it are not consistent. They get tired. They say something in front of the wrong person. They let something slip in an unguarded moment. No one can live inside a fabricated version of events indefinitely without the seams beginning to show. Consider what the maintenance of this lie actually required. Every person told had to be managed separately. Every version of the account had to be calibrated to whoever was receiving it. Every new development had to be filtered back through the original fabrication to remain consistent. That is not a way of living. That is a full-time operation, and it has been running without pause since the moment deception was chosen over accountability. The exhaustion of that operation is visible if you know what to look for, and the people around them have started looking. When the first crack appeared, it did not stay small. Every slightly off detail that had previously been dismissed got reconsidered. Every moment the account did not quite add up got re-examined, and your warning, the one everyone was told to disbelieve, came back. It came back fully validated. You were not even present for any of this. You were not fighting. You were not campaigning for your version of events to be heard. You were living your life. And your life, the way you were moving, the way you carried yourself, the momentum visibly building on your side, was doing all of the work. That cotted around. Eventually a point arrives where the patches on a lie become more suspicious than the lie itself, where the energy required to explain the gap between the fabricated account and observable reality is greater than any reasonable person would spend on something genuinely true. Innocent people do not work this hard. People with nothing to hide do not exhaust themselves managing information at this pace. Would breach it. The people who had been lending belief without fully examining it started doing the arithmetic quietly, the fabricated account on one side, observable reality on the other. The numbers kept not matching. They tried to make you unbelievable before this moment arrived. They came very close, but they could not make reality unbelievable, and reality arrived wearing your words like a badge. Understand what is happening right now mechanically. This is not mysterious. This is cause and effect. And body. What is more clact and vervaard sabrisu. A partisan and rampel forward right. Into parts party with subtle and plubbed and then another. The more layers stack, the more there is to keep straight, and the more opportunities appear for something to contradict something else. The deeper cost is not even energy, it is identity. When someone builds enough of their public self on a constructed version of events, they begin losing track of where the fabrication ends and the real self begins. The performance eventually becomes the only version of themselves they can access. The real self, with its real choices, real consequences, and real accountability, gets buried so deep that even they cannot find it clearly anymore. That is what you are watching happen now. The specific weight of this particular moment is that every layer has to be accounted for at once. It is not one isolated claim being exposed, it is the entire architecture. Every false characterization of you, every manipulation of events, every alliance built on a fabricated premise, every person gathered around an account that has now been proven wrong. All of it simultaneously demanding to be answered for. You named this, you described this exact destination before it existed, and the people around them, the ones who were given the account about you, are now watching everything arrive exactly as you said it would. Your warning is not just confirmed, it is playing out in sequence, exactly the way you mapped it. The group gathered to disbelieve you is now the group watching you be vindicated. There is no comfortable version of that position. There is no reframe available. And none of this is something you engineered. This is the natural consequence of building an attack on someone who was simply standing in their truth and allowing it to hold. One, your ground held. Theirs did not. One, your chosen one. This is the pivot, because none of this, not the warning, not the prophecy, not the vindication, is actually about them. It has always been about you, about what you carry, about why you have always been able to see what others miss, and why the things you speak over situations tend to materialize with an accuracy that cannot be written off as coincidence. You have a gift, not a soft or decorative one, a hard, functional, battle-tested capacity for reading the truth of people and situations before the evidence becomes visible to anyone else. This capacity was built through experience and through necessity. At a point in your life, reading situations accurately was not optional, it was required, and what started as a survival skill became something far more powerful over time. This is why deception fails around you. Not because you hunt for it, because you are calibrated to truth, and falsehood produces an internal signal that your whole system receives before your conscious mind can articulate it. You felt something was wrong about this person before you had language for it. You sensed the calculation beneath the warmth before anyone else would have believed you if you had named it. Most people stay quiet until the consensus forms. Most people need confirmation from others before they will name what they see. You speak first, from the knowing alone, without waiting for the crowd to catch up. And every time you have done that about something real, reality has eventually confirmed it. That is your track record, not a streak of luck. A consistent pattern of seeing accurately and speaking honestly, followed inevitably by the world arriving at the same conclusion you already reached. The person choking on your words right now is adding one more entry to that track record, one more confirmation, one more proof that when you speak a truth, the world eventually reflects it back. That I'm ripe. The person on something like this has played out in your life. And it will not be the last, unless you understand what is actually driving the pattern. People who operate through deception are drawn to people with real discernment. That sounds counterintuitive. Why would someone who lies be drawn to someone who sees through lies? Because your clarity, your groundedness, your ability to name things accurately, that is magnetic. Your presence makes people around you feel more real, more anchored, more grounded in what is true. And people who are fundamentally disconnected from their own truth are desperately hungry for exactly that kind of authentic presence. So they come close, they absorb what you offer, they use it, then they discover that your clarity is not selective. It does not only perceive what is comfortable to perceive, it sees everything, and the moment they realize you are seeing past the performance into the actual pattern of their choices, the dynamic shifts entirely because they cannot afford to be seen. Their whole operation depends on controlling what is known about them, and you become a direct threat to that control simply by paying attention. So the threat has to be neutralized, and neutralizing the threat means neutralizing you through fabrication, through false victimhood, through the campaign to make you look like the problem. You are going to keep encountering versions of this until you understand something fundamental. You do not need to earn the right to trust your own perception. You do not need more evidence before acting on what you already know. You do not need consensus from people who have not yet seen what you are already seeing. When the knowing arrives, trust it, move on it, do not negotiate with it, and do not wait for it to become more convenient. To be specific about what that actually looks like, this is not about becoming closed or suspicious of everyone you meet. Your discernment is not a wall, it is a filter, and a filter only works when things are flowing through it freely. Trusting the gift looks like this. When the words and the energy underneath them do not match, when a reaction to truth is wildly disproportionate to the truth being told, when warmth carries something underneath it that does not sit right, you do not spend extended time negotiating with that signal trying to make it go away. You note it, you stay present, you watch, and when the knowing solidifies into clarity, you act, you say what needs to be said, you draw the limit, you stop pouring your energy into a dynamic that your whole system is already telling you cannot hold it. The specific pattern that cost you in this situation was staying in the gap between knowing and proof far longer than was necessary. You knew before you had evidence. And you gave the benefit of the doubt past the point where the doubt had run out of benefit to give. Not because you were weak, because you are someone who does not want to be wrong about a person. You give real chances because you understand that real chances matter. You have earned the right to act on it without waiting for the level of proof that would satisfy a formal proceeding. The appligest. The instrument is calibrated. Trust it. While all of this was unfolding, while the fabrication was being maintained and then collapsing under its own weight, something completely different was happening on your side. What you were building. Every moment you held your integrity when compromise was easier. Every time you told the truth when a convenient deflection was available. Every time you walked away from something that was costing you your clarity and your sense of self. Every limit held under pressure. Every forward step taken instead of a backward glance. All of that compounded into something real, something with genuine weight and tangible consequence. Oh, door is open. Maybe it is already clearly visible to you. A new direction, a relationship that actually reflects your value, an opportunity that exists precisely because of who you remained through everything you walked through. This is not consolation. This is the specific result of specific choices made consistently over time. And this blessing does something that no confrontation or public defense ever could. It closes the case entirely. When the person painted as the villain is clearly, visibly building something real, when your life is expanding in the exact directions the fabricated narrative said you would never reach, that account dismantles itself without a single word from you. You do not have to defend anything. Your life makes the argument on your behalf. The people who knew both sides of this, who heard what was circulated about you and are now watching your life, are doing the comparison on their own. You do not need to manage that process. Reality is managing it. Every observation they make, every comparison between the version they were given and the person they can actually see, adds another weight to the side of truth. And something else is worth naming here. The relationships in your life that are genuine, the people who know you directly, who were never fooled by the fabricated account because they know the actual person, those bonds are strengthening right now. The people who held the truth about your character when a false version was being circulated, who believed in you when it was inconvenient to do so, are now watching the world catch up to what they already knew. That is a specific kind of loyalty that only gets forged in this specific kind of fire, and it belongs to you permanently. What was designed to leave you without support ended up building you better support than you had before. Here is the core truth of all of this. You win by living. Not by fighting, not by exposing, not by assembling your own group and going to war on the terrain that was chosen against you. The moment you step onto that terrain, you communicate something you do not want to communicate, that the fabricated version of events is substantial enough to require a rebuttal. It is not. Your peace, the specific, visible, impossible to fake peace of someone who did the right thing and knows it, is the most devastating argument available. Real peace cannot be manufactured. It comes from integrity that has been tested under pressure and held. And it is perceptible to anyone paying close enough attention. So you do not need to announce anything. You do not need to correct any record publicly. The truth is doing that work on its own timeline, more thoroughly than anything you could orchestrate, reaching into corners you would never have thought to address. When someone comes to you, someone from the outer circle who is now connecting the dots, wanting to share what they observed or fill in gaps they are now questioning, you do not need to perform offense or mount a defense or deliver a full account. You can simply say, I know. 2 words, delivered with the settled authority of someone who has been standing in their truth the entire time. Those 2 words communicate everything. This is not new information, this is not rattling me, and I never left the ground I was already on. When contact is attempted, directly or through someone else, looking to reopen a channel or get a response that can be used to restart a narrative, you are allowed to give nothing. Silence is not weakness in this position. Silence is the most powerful response available to someone who has already said everything that needed to be said. The warning was given, it was refused, the warning came true. There is nothing left to add. Let your absence speak. At this point it is louder than any words. Walk into every space like someone who knows exactly who they are. Not loudly, not aggressively, with the specific grounded confidence of someone who spoke the truth, held their integrity under fire, and is now watching reality confirm every single word. That is not a posture to perform. That is simply who you are, expressed without apology. Someone is sitting somewhere right now, holding evidence that confirms every word you said. Your voice is the loudest presence in that moment, and they are choking on it, not as a figure of speech, but as a real, visceral, physical inability to swallow the fact that you were right. At the opening of this, that image existed to pull you into the reality of what is happening, to make it concrete, to make you feel the full weight of what your words actually carried and what they still carry. But notice where you are standing in that picture. You are not in the dark. You are not in crisis. You are not scrambling to find a version of events that holds together under pressure. You are the voice. You are the prophecy. You are the words they cannot shake loose no matter how hard they try. Your words carry that staying power because you do not speak carelessly. You are not someone who manufactures drama or throws accusations around for effect. When you speak from genuine seeing, from a clear, honest, grounded read of what is actually true. And genuine seeing, once spoken out loud, does not evaporate when it is rejected. It waits with infinite patience for reality to confirm it. Reality confirmed it. This moment is not a victory over another person. It is a confirmation of you. It is the closing of a loop that opened the moment you told an inconvenient truth to someone who could not afford to hear it. It began with your knowing, and it ends with everyone knowing. You were right. You are right. And more importantly, you have always known you were right. The vindication is not changing your ground. It is simply making your ground visible to everyone else. Now look forward, because this is not an ending. This is a confirmation delivered in the middle of something much larger. The confirmation is saying, yes, the gift is real. Yes, what you see is accurate. Yes, you can trust what you know without waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. Hold on to that. Because there will be another moment where the knowing arrives before the proof does, where your read on something is already clear and the evidence has not materialized yet, where you have to decide whether to honor what you sense or talk yourself out of it. Honor it, immediately, without negotiating with your own doubt. Every time you have honored that knowing and acted from it, the world has confirmed it. Every time you have overridden it, given more grace than the situation earned, stayed longer than the clarity warranted, waited for a level of proof you already had in a different form, you already know exactly how that ends. It ends with someone sitting somewhere choking on the words you were right to say, finally understanding what you understood from the very beginning. While that cycle is finished now, what comes next is a version of your life where the gift is not minimized, not apologized for, and not managed around other people's comfort. What comes next is you moving through the world with the full authority of someone who has been tested, who did not break, who told the truth when it was costly, and who watched the world arrange itself around that truth exactly as it always does. They thought they were dealing with someone manageable. They were dealing with someone who prophesied the outcome before the opening move was even made. And the blessing already in motion toward you, the door already open, the life already building. That is what happens when someone like you stops spending their energy on what cannot hold it and starts walking fully toward what can. Walk, do not look back. The dark and the sleepless night and the choking on your words, all of that is behind you now. Everything ahead of you is